fiscal irresponsibility of the commercial and central banks to dump all the irresponsible like debt generated by their money printing into like Bitcoin and be like, oh, problem solved, keep printing forever. I mean, that's basically what they want to do. It's insane.
In the intricate web of global power dynamics, certain entities often wield significant influence behind the scenes. Whitney Webb delves into one such nexus in her video, shedding light on the connections between Endeavor, Bitcoin, and Argentina's economic landscape. As we explore these interconnections, we uncover a narrative of power, influence, and the shaping of financial systems. Join us as we dissect the implications of these alliances and their potential impact on the future. Whitney Webb begins by unraveling the threads that bind together various entities, highlighting the pivotal role of Endeavor, chaired by Edgar Bronfman Jr. This organization's reach extends across Latin America, with a focus on Argentina, where it nurtures and shapes burgeoning companies. Webb draws attention to the symbiotic relationship between Endeavor and key players like Reid Hoffman, known for his ties to PayPal and LinkedIn.
A lot of their companies were funded and directed by this entity that Mark mentioned earlier called Endeavor, which is chaired right now by Edgar Bronfman Jr., who, if you've read my book, you'll know a lot about the Bronfmans and organized crime and political power. They're, for example, the family that essentially bankrolled Justin Trudeau in Canada, among other figures. And they're very powerful. Reid Hoffman of the PayPal mafia and LinkedIn and whatnot, also a very close Epstein pal, is also very intimately tied up with Endeavor. And the companies that Endeavor helped create are some of the biggest companies in Latin America now. Many of them are based in Argentina. The biggest one, of course, is based in Argentina, the first Endeavor success story, which would be Mercado Libre. Which is Marcos Galperin, who, as Mark mentioned earlier, he's on the board of Satellogic, involved with a lot of these other companies. Mercado Libre itself is very much interfaced with Paxos, PayPal, and groups like that. And it's sort of like what happened earlier, what I mentioned earlier about those figures sort of king making the corporate titans of Latin America. So this is like a modern iteration of that with like the same players. You know, they're funding these startups and ensuring which companies get big and if they succeed, but they're, you know, Endeavor's not an Argentinian entity. It's an entity run by people like Edgar Bronfman and Reid Hoffman. And so there's an Endeavor Argentina branch in pretty much all of these companies that we discuss in the piece that are based in Argentina are part of this Endeavor Argentina network. And Argentina is where I would argue, are going to test out a lot of these efforts, most likely under Milei, because he's very amenable to these kinds of policies. And so one of these figures that, you know, that comes up a lot in the piece, this Diego Gutierrez, he's one of the co-founders of RSK, of Rootstock. He gave this very revealing interview about a year ago, and he was talking about several things that I think are important to bring up in the context of this interview. One of them is that as Bitcoin becomes integrated into Wall Street, Bitcoin has to shed its ethos, as he called it. Essentially, it has to stop being a tool of dissent, a threat to both commercial and central banks, and essentially become their tool. That's what he says. So for Bitcoin to succeed, in his eyes, that has to happen. So that's very telling. And then he also says that there's going to be a concerted push to move away from money printed by the state, meaning central banks, and instead move to commodity-backed stablecoins where the people that own the commodities will have all the power. I think that's very interesting. Because obviously Milei, in his case, right, came to power framing himself as very libertarian, but his policies thus far have shown him to be very crony capitalist, in my opinion. We've talked about this before, and Mark brought up some stuff, to that point. But keep in mind too that a lot of the people in his government are from J.P. Morgan, for example, or the Argentinian branch of major Wall Street banks. He's been very closey with people like Fink and Musk, as discussed, among others. And very friendly with like Zelensky and the Ukraine stuff. I mean, this is not a very libertarian guy under other metrics. And there's been a lot of, antagonism with him and Argentina's central bank, which of course is responsible for a lot of bad stuff that has happened in Argentina. But people also need to remember the history of how Argentina got here, which as a lot of this fiscal trouble for Argentina began when it was run by a U.S. and CIA-backed military coup, then under Carlos Menem, who was the great, I say this great not in the actually like, oh, that was great sense, like big, I guess, the big neoliberal in Argentina, recent political history, who was basically just like a goon for, U.S., foreign interests really to like gobble up Argentinian resources. Milei is a big fan of Menem, and some of the people that are in his government started their political careers under Menem, like Patricia Bullrich, the interior minister, for example. So, you could really frame Milei as a continuation of that stuff, because Mauricio Macri, a lot of people in Milei's government are from the Macri government, especially his economics team. There's a direct line to all of that. And so I am very concerned that, that would be celebrated as like a big, yes, he's gonna, the central bank's not gonna print the peso anymore. It's over and he's saved Argentina. Well, is it really saving Argentina if he's, going to make, they're going to use dollar peg stable coins. They're regulating the cred of Bitcoin right now. They're going to move to this whole model of commodity-backed stable coins, which is already actually happening in Argentina. A company backed by Visa that's based in Argentina is tokenizing basically all of the country's grain deposits to use that as currency. So whoever owns all of the grains, and the biggest landowner is a big former backer of Mauricio Macri, part of Endeavor Argentina. His name is Eduardo Elstein. He owns all of the commodities. He's also a big shareholder of some of Israel's biggest companies. He's going to be the guy that basically controls the money then, right? At least with the grain-backed stable coins. So if you have all these oligarchs in charge of different industries, which is essentially what Argentina has been becoming and has been happening really everywhere around the world, who's going to be in charge of the money? Is that really better than the central bank having it? Because remember, the central bank's run by the commercial bank. So you're just getting, the same shit under a different, name, basically. I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff going on here, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops, but,
Central to this narrative is the emergence of Mercado Libre, a corporate titan birthed through Endeavor's support. Webb elucidates how figures like Marcos Galperin, deeply entrenched in Endeavor's ecosystem, wield influence not only in Argentina, but also in global financial spheres. Mercado Libre's integration with Paxos PayPal underscores the convergence of traditional finance and emerging digital currencies. However, Webb's analysis transcends mere economic dynamics, delving into the ideological underpinnings of Bitcoin's evolution. Diego Ayters, a co-founder of Rootstock, articulates a vision where Bitcoin sheds its dissenting ethos to become a tool of mainstream financial institutions. This transformation, Webb argues, marks a departure from Bitcoin's original ethos of challenging centralized power structures.
I think there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin media space that will never talk about this or what you just mentioned. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of money and effort has been put into specifically homogenizing media discourse in the Bitcoin space, because they want Bitcoiners as much as possible to be compliant, while Larry Fink and his ilk do what they want with Bitcoin and make it what they want it to be, so that people are content with number go up and sort of the Saylor-esque talking points that have gotten a lot of, a lot of people have heard those versus what you just mentioned, from example. There needs to be a cultural shift in Bitcoin in the opposite direction of what this Diego guy from Rootstock said, where he's like, we need to drop the whole, stop fiscal irresponsibility of the banks and central banks and, be a challenge and threat to their power. We have to drop that if we want to get rich. That's the mentality there. And I feel like the Saylor mentality really isn't that different from that. We have to push people in the other direction, because if we go in the direction they're pushing those, people to go in, people that want to drop the ethos or whatever and make Bitcoin just a tool for Wall Street, I mean, no. If we let that happen, very bad things happen, and there has to be a fight. And there's a specific effort that's been launched against people that hold Bitcoin to try and get them to be compliant in that sense. And and that's through controlling the discourse in the media space. There needs to be a desire among Bitcoiners to return to the original ethos, not the opposite. There needs to be a fight for that. People need to care about that again. Yeah, but it doesn't involve everyone's financial enslavement, and it doesn't enable the fiscal irresponsibility of the commercial and central banks to dump all the irresponsible debt generated by their money printing into Bitcoin and be like, oh, problem solved, keep printing forever. I mean, that's basically what they want to do. It's insane.
It is.
And there's people that are like, that's fine because now I have money.
The Argentine context adds another layer to this intricate narrative. Webb scrutinizes President Milei's policies, juxtaposing his libertarian rhetoric with his administration's embrace of crony capitalism. Drawing parallels to past neoliberal regimes, Webb raises concerns about the commodification of Argentina's economy under the guise of financial innovation. Key to this transformation are commodity-backed stable coins, heralded as a solution to Argentina's fiscal woes. Yet, Webb warns against the consolidation of power in the hands of oligarchs like Eduardo Elstein, whose influence extends far beyond Argentina's borders. The tokenization of grain deposits exemplifies a shift towards a financial model where control lies in the hands of a select few.